Hello and welcome to the No Hair, All Art podcast. I'm your very bald host, Mookie Spitz. And the one with all the heart today is Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers. Welcome aboard the pod.
Thank you so much, Mookie. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I'm so glad to be here with you. You are a professor, an author, a clinician, a therapist, and you bring a lot to the table in terms of understanding sexuality and how sexuality has implications across just about everything we do. And in a macro sense, even societally. Our culture now in the US of A is frothy. It's a cauldron of contention, politics, upheaval. To what extent do you think how America came to be fosters some of this roiling history? And what recommendations can you give us to not only chill ourselves out, but maybe help our fellow human make life a little bit better in 2025?
Oh, that's a gigantic question.
Yeah, that's kind of a big way to start. But I think with a Renaissance woman like you, that would be an apropos framework.
Oh, I can play with that, no problem. The last 45 years in particular, America has made some significant shifts, and I can talk more about those because they do impact us tremendously. But the stage had been set for that prior to. And so just from like a 40,000 foot view, we made bodies and spirituality separate from each other and we instituted that inside the brand new Christian religion in the 4th century when Constantine, who was the emperor, became a Christian and appointed the men who were fighting over who could be more spiritual, not around an issue that had anything to do with Jesus' ministry or anything about that. It was about what man could deny his body the most, body's natural desires. That person was the most spiritual. And so they were all fighting around that. And when they couldn't do it well, do you know what they did? Because we're still doing it today. They blamed the women. How could you? You were the temptress.
I was just going to say, sounds like the root of some great misogyny to come.
Yeah, well, and the culture was already very patriarchal. I mean, it had come from Roman Jewish reign, which was, again, very patriarchal. So the steps were set for some things to build upon what were already going to be really faulty steps for a successful culture.
Can I quickly ask you why? Because if you look at the pagan societies and what even Nietzsche called the dichotomy between the Dionysian and the Apollonian, right? They knew how to party. And at the same time, there was a more cognitive, rational side to things. How did Western civilization, especially in Europe, go so far off the rails when it came to being in touch with one's body and accepting our instinctive needs in a way that didn't short circuit so much of what came from it?
Again, what I describe about the foundation when Christianity became an empire religion, right? That things that were happening socioculturally at that time shaped how that got formed. Now, not every line of even Christianity follows that particular one. You've got the Hellenic line that's more your Greek Orthodox, and that kind of went through a different area, and there they held on to mysteries, which of course most of them had pagan roots, right? But they held on to there's a mystery. Yeah, there's a thing we don't know. And so you'll see in some of those lines a struggle still around the body and sexuality, but they've got this tiny little back door that allows them to go, well, but we might not know everything. We on the Western side of things, went into Rome and Europe and down into the US or over to the US, was very much about hierarchy, patriarchy. Men were on top, maybe God's above that, and then women and children and everything else. And that and then the separation of body and soul, right? So we've made now anything, the soul, more important, more elevated. Anything having to do with the body is more base. Well, and then we have, third, fourth, fifth century church leaders who are talking about how awful women are and how they're the reason for all sin and they're weak and they're blah, blah, all of that. So those things became foundational to how we think. But we have to ask ourselves, who does it serve when patriarchy's in charge?
Well, the men.
Yeah. And if we make what men want what's most important, and a woman has to serve him, give him what he wants, that is a kind of power and control structure. Yeah. Right. I mean, it
Sure.
has its flaws for sure, but it's a kind of structure.
Gender-based hierarchy with other
Gender-based
qualifiers.
hierarchy. But we have to ask ourselves, how does that affect an interpersonal relationship? How are they getting along? How well do either one of them feel seen, known, loved, and accepted? Or another way to put that, free to express who they are with the other. And that would include sexually. I first have to be safe enough to say, who am I? What do I like? What makes me particular in the way I like to share connection and the way I like to share pleasure, which is what sexuality kind of is. Then I want to be with somebody who also has asked those questions and given themselves permission to live a life that is full, has an ample amount of connection and pleasure in it. And it has more than one way to achieve it. It has ways together and a ways apart. And it's an open conversation because we don't want mediocre touch in our family.
Yeah, but to your point, when shame is instituted as a mechanism of control, then the exact opposite is taking place.
That's exactly right.
And it's cross-generational,
It's
self-perpetuating.
cross-generational. It's epigenetic. I mean,
Right.
It goes way down deep. And because we start getting shamed on our bodies in America, about 95% of families across the US are silent about sexuality and bodies and all of that, or silent and shaming.
Completely. I mean, that's my experience when I talk about
Right.
sexuality with any friends, family. I
It's
tend to be
so
an open
common.
person. It's just
Yeah.
it's ubiquitous.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yay for you that you're talking about it. So many people are alone in their stories, totally sure that they're the weird one. They're the one where something's wrong with them. But I want to talk because it's a real cognitive, neurocognitive body experience when we're shamed. So Brene Brown, bless her heart, did incredible research around shame. So that became an everyday word many of us now understand well, right? But sexual shame is another layer of an other kind of shame. And this particular one, the other one might have epigenetics involved, but this particular one has a clean epigenetic line in most families, right? Where people were scared. And because the power and control in heterosexual relationships in particular meant they were both unsafe. So they both didn't know each other and they kept doing the same thing over and over and over again. And because they felt shame from such an early age, it was down deep in their body. So let me ask the $20,000 developmental question. At what point does a child, at what age about approximately, find their genitals?
I would say very young. I would say age 4, 5.
Before they're a year old. And it has to do with their hands when they're first.
By finding, I'm interpreting not just knowing that they're there, but knowing
No,
that they
it's
can
finding.
do something. It's doing something.
Yeah, they find it and they go, wow.
Exactly.
I always say
That's why I put it a
best.
little bit later. Right.
Yeah, right. But this is happening. Our left brain isn't online yet because that's where language will develop. We're completely right brain. It's where desire and play and color and art, all of it is. Right brain is online. My hands are no longer hitting me. I'm now realizing I can reach for things. And it accidentally, the first time happens while I'm getting my diapers changed or I'm in the tub, my hand lands on my genitals. And I go, "Wow, that's on me." Now I have to do that 20 more times before I start to go, "Oh, there's an association here." But let me tell you, they are excited from that instant forward. The question is, what does the caregiver do?
Well, the
If the
caregiver is like,
caregiver
don't do that.
Right, if they
Don't
scream,
do that.
"Don't, gross, that's dirty, don't touch, don't touch." They
Right.
get loud, right? Scary for a little infant, right? Or
Hmm.
and maybe they slap their hand away.
So
Gross,
there's
don't
an
do that.
association between finding your genitals, experiencing pleasure in a very open, instinctive way, and
Right,
rebuke, negative reinforcement from a
absolutely.
very, very early age. So they're connected.
Very early.
They're connected.
And because a child at that age, 11 months old or so, that age doesn't have the cognitive capacity to start making associations yet. That's going to happen between 3 and 4. I am going to find and then intentionally find my genitals multiple times, and I'm going to get yelled at each and every time. Now, that is a human, healthy curiosity. To notice connection and pleasure is one of the most human things about us. When infants are born, milk's not there. They're rooting for the breast, not because they can get fed, but because it's the smell, it's the connection and pleasure, right? We know that toddlers, if they don't get enough holding and some real tactile love, they can suffer neurological damage as they get older, right? Skip forward to a time when we don't have our memories anymore and we're in memory care. What we see is adults without memory seeking connection and pleasure all the time, and it drives their adult children crazy, and it's challenging to manage on the floor, but it's human. In the in between, we start putting on our default cognitive shoulds and shouldn'ts. That's what happens in our adult life, and we're like overriding what our gut is saying, right? When you have been told that your natural curiosity, your natural humanness is not okay from a preverbal state consistently across your life, right? Because you're at the table, you get in trouble. Somebody walks in your room, you get in trouble. I mean, it is consistent. And we don't give you education. So instead of saying to that little one, "Yeah, that's your penis. It is a wonderful part of you. Now let's move your hand over here and finish diapering you." Labeling, that's what we're doing for infants and toddlers. That's a dog, that's a cat, that's a tree, smell it. Like we are helping them understand their world. Our genitals are no different than our elbow. It's an important part of our life. It's an important part of how we are, right?
Arguably an even more significant one.
Well, I don't wanna live without either, but yeah, I'd probably do the
I
same thing too.
agree. Yeah.
And in part because it's a place of connection where I can have connection and pleasure with myself or with an other if I want, right? So it is powerful because connection and pleasure are powerful to us as humans. But what we've done in getting angry at a little one for this is we consistently tell him or her who you are is not okay. Something is wrong with you. Not something is wrong with my genitals. Not yet. Okay. It's me because I don't understand what I'm getting in trouble for. Because what I'm getting in trouble for is my curiosity and just desire. That is human. So I think I'm not okay. So now imagine we haven't been giving them any information. And I wrote a book that has stuff for 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8. Like there is stuff, conversations and labeling and things you want to be doing along the way. So you're building a network of understanding, just like we do on health and wellness.
So, just to summarize, it's important to lay a foundation for the child of empathy, understanding,
Yeah.
not even tolerance, because tolerance is a bad word that assumes the negative implicitly. I'm tolerating that you're finding yourself. It's more
Well,
of an
yeah.
open celebration, if you will, of just being yourself.
Right. I mean, just stop for a minute and ask yourself, how would that feel to you if you felt that somebody you loved was simply tolerating you,
Yeah,
tolerating your genitals,
I hate
tolerating your
that word
pleasure?
tolerance. It's putting up
Right.
with.
Yeah. S- So we have to say, well, what's another way? What about, like you said, what about celebration? What about if I want a child to know that every part of them is a little miracle? And I'm going to be there to help protect them and teach them how to manage that part, that way in the world in a way that can work. And we will also critique what is working and isn't working in the world, right? Like it's an ongoing conversation, but it starts that early. So when people are with their kid and their kid finds their genitals and they feel themselves go, I'm just slowing it down some, feel themselves go, oh no, oh no, what do I do? And feel fear around it. They're already in a heightened, triggered state. Okay.
And
And
pleasure
I
and
have
pain have come together in truly potentially devastating ways, right?
absolutely.
Right,
So I'm
right.
often saying to people, it is okay that you feel that. You earned that from somebody who loved you very much and didn't know how to give you what you needed. So it's not bad about you. And it's something that you're going to want to heal. So I'm just saying, notice that feeling, put your hand on your heart and say, it's okay. I can help you know that this will be okay.
So many of our problems as adults come from this sense of repression, holding back, and shaming, because our desires, our inchoate instinctive desires, need release, and if you're bottling them up, then they find other ways to express themselves. And we're in a society of compulsive addiction,
Right.
even of political polarization, of basically being nasty to each other. And we've created a society that, in a sense, is almost compensating for some of this early shaming. I
Yeah.
mean, it
I
makes
really
sense,
wonder that.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder that same thing. I really do, Mookie, because so Brene did some great work, right? But we did not have an researched operational definition of sexual shame until 2017. It actually was defended in a dissertation a month after my book, Sex, God, and the Conservative Church, Erasing Shame from Sexual Intimacy. That book came out. I would have loved to have put it in there. I put it in the audio version of it, but I'd love to read it to you because with what you just said in mind, in that, how could what we have experienced growing up, I'm in a patriarchal, authoritarian home, it is silent, how could that have affected how I do my life and do relationships later and even think critically or not, right? So I want to read this to you because I would love to pick it apart with you about how you think it's manifesting now in the wider culture. Sexual shame is a visceral feeling. So it's in my body. It's not just in my cognition. I feel it down deep. Visceral feeling of humiliation and disgust toward one's own body and identity as a sexual being, and a belief of being abnormal, inferior, and unworthy. This feeling can be internalized, but it also manifests in interpersonal relationships. That's really where it starts, right? With the little one and their caregiver, right? Who's providing life for them, really. So, interpersonal relationships having a negative impact on trust, communication, and physical and emotional intimacy. Sexual shame develops across the lifespan in interactions with interpersonal relationships, as I've just said, but then one's culture and society lays its messages down, right? So we sell things through exploitation. I'm going to make you feel bad about whatever, and you're going to want to go buy more of that whatever.
It's control, and this goes all the way back
Sure.
to the early church, right? Like you
Right.
mentioned. Yeah, it's a mechanism of societal control.
Right, power and
Yeah,
control. It's
yeah,
patriarchy. It's how
yeah.
patriarchy works. So I'm power over, not power with. If I'm power with, I'm going to be struggling with all the democratic things that happen here.
I need to
But we're going to,
negotiate my power, and I
yeah,
don't wanna do that. I don't wanna
no,
negotiate my
no,
power.
no, no, no.
Right, right.
But it doesn't work for sustaining close human relationships. There is a study in Harvard that's 85 years old called the happiness study. And what keeps coming out in it is that people's happiness and longevity is directly tied to how close and safe their interpersonal relationships are. Right. So, anyway, I'll just finish this off. But once culture and society lays its piece on top and creates a subsequent critical self appraisal. So, an inner critic gets going and it's beating me up every day, all day until I go to heal it. Right. There is also a fear and uncertainty related to one's power or right to make decisions, including safety decisions related to sexual encounters, along with an internalized judgment towards one's own sexual desire. So, what that means is Peggy Ornstein wrote 2 books about a decade ago. One was called Girls and Sex, one was called Boys and Sex. She interviewed current kiddos, 80 to 100 kids between 15 and 22, girls and then boys. In the girls one, she found out she was talking to these young women who felt confident and competent in so many areas of their life. But then when they got ready to go out, they would put down 3, 4, or 5 shots of hard liquor because they didn't know if they could keep themselves safe or if they had the right to. These were not religious kids. This was a spattering, a demographic spattering. And these kids were pointing out that we had a pervasive rape culture that had been cultivated by silence, shame, condemnation, all of this that makes me feel terrible about myself, and then power and control. What's my role in the power and control game? Right? And it was widespread. Boys, some kids, boys totally knew when they were being exploitive. But some were so naive, they didn't even know because in 1980, we removed money for research in sexuality and we removed the sex education we had in place since the mid 40s. We removed it. Right. And so then what ends up happening is you have a dearth of actual information. 3 years later, we pass rules in bills and stuff in Congress to allow the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to no longer really have any protections in place for the public. They don't have to follow journalistic rules, right? So we started what became most important in the US was that we made money for our stockholders, not that we paid attention to the impact. Okay. I still have a frying pan from my parents got married in 1958. That still works. Okay. It was a different ethic. Okay. Now, however we get there doesn't matter as long as we make money for the stockholders. Fine and good if we want to do that, but it's not sustainable. Yeah.
It's designed obsolescence,
That's
intended
right.
obsolescence, and
Sure.
societally, it's mechanisms of control again rear their head.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to share a personal story, I had
Yeah.
sex ed. I am a Boomer Gen X cusp in age,
Oh, and you
and
got some. Good. You were, yeah.
yeah, and then my son is a Zoomer. He's
Yeah.
19. And he was relating to me just the other day. We have transparent conversations about sex and sexuality. I think we have
Lovely.
a healthy,
Beautiful.
reasonable relationship. I think it's
Yeah.
great. And he was asking me some fairly basic questions about
Yeah.
sex. And then I was like, you went to New York City. This is Manhattan high schools. And
Yeah.
the level of ignorance that these
Mm-hmm.
kids took with them into their
Mm-hmm.
college years is
Mm-hmm.
astonishing to
It
me.
is.
I
Yeah.
had sex ed going all the way back to middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I remember we saw videos and there were awkward moments and there were
Yeah.
conversations, but it was an
Yeah.
atmosphere where there was this belief grounded in scientific
Yeah.
efficacy, really,
Oh,
that be
yeah.
transparent, be at least educate about the biology, at least
Yes.
educate about the
Yes.
mechanism. And I
Yes.
got that, and I appreciated that. And
Yeah.
frankly, from what I've learned from my own son, in a Manhattan, a
Yeah.
blue
Oh, yeah.
city, progressive, they just elected their Muslim mayor. The level of sex ed was
Mm-mm.
beyond belief to me. And the questions
Yeah.
that my son was asking me was like, really? They didn't teach you
No.
this. They
Yeah.
don't.
No. In
They
fact,
don't.
they tied it federally to money that you got in the public schools. They began to unroll, and this came with Reagan, to unroll abstinence-only education, which was
Which is,
fear-based.
again, remember the genie in the bottle? It's
Right.
like
I know.
kids,
I
kids
know.
are kids are going to
No.
be they found
Right.
they found, to your point, they found their genitals when they were a year old.
That's right. And they're going to be kind of probably a little bit like you, which you probably, were just doing this
Yeah.
too, right? Yeah, I just feel like a lot of people were unaware that how much federal money was put into abstinence education. And that was coupled with removing other kinds of education out of the classroom. To this day, Mookie, we only have 18 states in the US that have passed policy that whatever sex education they offer must be medically accurate. We have one state that has passed, it must be comprehensive sex education. There is stuff for the elementary grades, and then there's stuff for the junior high and high school grades. They lay it out very, very clearly, and they unroll it across time, which is in developmentally appropriate ways. That's Washington State, and it just passed that, I don't know, 3 years ago.
Yeah, and part of the onus here, from what I've read, and I think you're likely better versed in this, is that the parents themselves have been complaining and pushing back at their schools, at their school districts, that their children are being exposed to
Well,
sexuality way too early and in
mhm,
droves, and is that information is actually having the reverse effect of what we believe
yeah,
it should, which is enlightenment and transparency and trust.
yeah,
It's they
right,
interpret it the opposite way, and this precipitates a reaction on the part of their local school districts, and it
right.
percolates back up politically, which is, we just need to pull the plug on all of it. We're going to
Right.
get sued,
Again,
right?
that becomes the most important thing. We know that Germany, or excuse me, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Holland have all had comprehensive sex ed programs since the 40s.
Yeah.
They have very low STI rates, very low teen pregnancy rates, and because low teen pregnancy rates, and they have healthcare to get their whatever contraception they're wanting, they have a very low abortion rate because people don't want that to be their birth control.
Yeah.
Women do not want that to be their birth control,
Yeah.
right? So those go down when you provide the stuff that's needed. Also, kids get married later in life. They tend to describe their first sexual experience as
Earlier.
loving. No, later, later, later. And it's because they've been taught emotional intelligence, relational intelligence, sexual intelligence. They've been taught, and their parents were too, and their grandparents. So this is a conversation around the table. So when kids are getting really close to somebody and they're thinking, I think I might want to be sexual, they talk to their parents about it. And when it happens at one of their homes. There's an excellent book called Not Under My Roof by Amy Shallett. It's based on a beautiful piece of qualitative research where she interviewed kids and families in 2 towns in Holland and 2 towns in the US. And then she just gives examples of
Like,
conversations
I'm
all the
sure
way
it's
through.
night and day, given that dynamic, right?
It
No,
is shocking for American parents to read that and go, I didn't I didn't think that that's what would happen. I thought they'd be sexual sooner. I thought they'd be more irresponsible. I thought they would be no. I mean, just think about it. What other area in the US do we fail to give our kids anything they need in order to be successful at it and safe, and then hand them the ability to do it with nothing else except for whatever media gave them and their
yeah.
friends gave them? We're literally saying driving a car is a really fun thing and you'll be able to do it when you're older, but you're not allowed to learn anything about it. You're not allowed to just go in it and leave, just nothing, like nothing. And then I hand you keys at 16 and say you're safe to drive on the freeway. It makes no logical sense.
And
It
then making an accident illegal, namely abortion.
Right. Well, and it's just, again, are we equipping our children to be successful? If we're equipping them to have good, strong, safe, loving, fun relationships when they're older, then we're giving them all the information that they need in age appropriate ways all along. Right? We're watching something with them at 10 and we're like, who do you think that commercial is for? Who do you think it's not for? Who does it include? Who does it exclude? We give them media literacy so they know how to think in today's culture, in their culture. Those they come back and they say, well, so and so's doing it. Okay, well, let's talk about that.
American hypocrisy is most striking, and I think it's an expression of this paradox, which on the one hand, we ostensibly want to keep our kids safe by keeping this information away from them,
Yeah.
in turn, directly or indirectly shaming them. And on the other hand, we have such a licentious, hedonistic, indulgent kind of culture. And the two are at odds, and in ways they feed off of each other. Because if kids can't have healthy sexual relationships and intimate relationships, then it gets out of the bottle in all sorts of ways that precipitate so many of the problems that we continue to face in society.
Yeah. I'm gonna say what you said slightly differently because I am totally on board with you, but I think this is just I tend to think on the systems level a little bit too, as well. And so when I think about the idea that I'm going to keep my child safe by not giving them the information, right? Then I am not equipping them to deal with the negative forces out there, like exploitation, right? A girl is 9-year-old playing in the front yard with a friend, and a truck of construction people drive by and make all kinds of rude remarks. And she has her first experience of, I might not be safe in the world. That was a much bigger person. And that felt really ucky on my inside. I don't know what that was. Right. Again, right down deep inside of her. So we're not preparing them to know not right from wrong, but what makes sense. What are their values? How does this match up with what are the family values? And also all the pieces of information that you need. We're not doing that. So now she is much more likely to be exploited and to see it as flattery and
And
not
she
realize
she
the
is
danger in there.
exploited because the level of abuse is
Of course.
astronomical to the point of ubiquity. So
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. But
that's the
it's ubiquitous
tragedy
on the
on
other
top
side
of all
too.
this,
I
right?
think men are exploiting and they don't realize they're exploiting because and I'm talking straight men in particular, all of the porn, so much of the free porn that they have watched has had exploitation at the center of it, right? Making it look like, it's just in a way that there's much more power and control than if you watch gay porn, for example. You just don't see the exploitation as much. You don't see the coercion as much in there. And yeah, it's really different. And when I got a PhD in clinical sexology, so I got to look at how humans across time in the world express and navigate their sexual relationships. But the other thing is when you talk about the hedonistic, we got this, I don't feel like that is sexual. Again, that is part of the narrative of I'm going to sell you your basically you're not just what you want, but I'm going to prey on your want. Like you get to get what you want. There's nothing in your way. You just take what you want, right? It's very much extraction. We see that there are very few places where you can see in a safe kind of way the range of how adults who are giving consent express their sexuality, but there's no power and control, right? So you might see wild things out there, but what I'm wanting people to look under is what's the nature of the relationship? Where's the power? Like who has power? Who doesn't have power? Who has say? Can she stop it? Can she stop the storyline at any point and say, hey, I would rather, right? We're not showing interpersonal, caring, mutual relationships so that people have full voice.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just extracting the implications of that, which is, we're centered on a lack of trust, a lack of transparency, overt shaming. It precipitates abuse.
Yes.
And then everyone suffers. And the end result of this is really broken and dysfunctional relationships. And if you have broken dysfunctional relationships, you're not intimate, you're not sharing, and then you go out there and then you stir up, you open up the bottle in ways that are damaging to you and damaging to our society.
Right.
And I think that a lot of what you're saying is the core of so much of our discord and anguish as a
right.
country.
Well, if I grew up with this shame, then when I want to connect with somebody, I've long since put a mask on. And I'm going to present what you want, what I think you want, or what my parents want, or whatever. But inside, I'm thinking, there's no way you could love me if you knew what was behind this. So I don't ever fully bring in all of your love. And even the love I give feels performative on some level, right? I don't feel seen, known, loved, and accepted. And that's human, right? And so I've got this distant thing going on. I leave to go to work or do whatever. I'm an empty vessel. I don't feel worthy. So I'm performing all day, every day, everywhere.
To everyone all the time. And the metric of my success is being really accepted by those who are ostensibly abusing me. So that's the tragedy of this all, not only for women, but for men, because men are also programmed into their own roles. And we're seeing that in the Zoomer male right now in epic proportions. There's a backlash to the backlash here. And I'm curious about your impression of this, which is statistically, this has been factually confirmed. Everyone from Pew Research on up and down, that Zoomer females are, as a category, doing so much better than their male counterparts. More women are graduating college. They're getting better jobs. They have better support networks. And the Zoomer male, the stereotype is reigning true of being in the basement, playing video games, and being unwilling or unable to initiate and sustain relationships.
Right.
And the problem is building. It's not shrinking. What's your impression of that? There's a sense of women coming into their own, especially the Gen Zers, and the men now are feeling that whiplash, and it has political expression too, like the Bronze Age perverts of the world, where this super masculinity, this hyper masculinity, is now being lauded in a way which is exacerbating all the problems that we've been discussing for the past half hour. It's as if instead of seeking enlightenment and harmony and openness, there is a regression to even more anachronistic habits that got us into this mess in the first place.
Absolutely.
How would you describe that? I mean, women are doing great in comparison to men. They're removing a lot of the shackles that they had to deal with. and men are pulling into themselves pretty much in unprecedented ways. So
Yeah, women are doing what they've been women are doing what they've been doing. I mean, I'm a borderline boomer too, and I can remember my father saying to me, at 15, so this was not too long after passage of Roe v. Wade.
yeah.
Most people don't realize the Southern Baptist Church, which is the largest church in the US, was for Roe v. Wade and the passage of it.
Mhm.
We have it all very clearly
It wasn't
documented.
politicized until it became a wedge issue much, much
It,
later. Like guns. Guns and abortion were like
well,
no-brainers
actually,
for a long time.
we had a history of trying to rally the conservative base, religious base, around an issue, and we had been using the segregation at Christian colleges, and we had continued to get money, federal money. That got pulled in 79. They had to come up with a new issue
Mhm.
to rally the religious right, and they chose abortion. It is not a biblical issue, and most people don't even know that history because we have been there's been so much misinformation in because that was part of driving our corporations forward. People are literally so confused. They don't know which way
There's
is
no
up.
context. Like gun control. The Black Panthers surrounded Ronald Reagan at the Sacramento Capitol. They came in pickup trucks and guns while Ronald Reagan was on the lawn giving a talk to high school kids, and everyone freaked out. And a lot of folks, white people with guns, were freaked out by this. That if you take the guns away from the Black Panthers, you're going to take guns away from us. This has been documented too. Almost
Sure.
no one knows about the context of this Second Amendment hysteria, and
Right.
that fostered the NRA. And that
Right.
became another wedge issue. We don't realize we're being manipulated by shame. We're being
Yes.
manipulated by politics. And in
Yep.
a sense, finding our genitals is a core wedge issue.
Yeah.
Right? It's been
Right, it
made
is.
political, right?
But
Yeah.
I guess I get really when you talk about, like, the messages that men have been giving and those messages that women have been getting and how those have been growing, women have been on a trajectory to see themselves as more than a servant for years, right? They've been on this mission and they've been growing in that as we've started to have more and more books and ways, and then an auntie who stood up for herself and whatever, like we're starting to get this has been momentum. This has been going for a long time. But recent research shows that women start to struggle in the interpersonal relationship if they're with a man because power and control stuff that maybe happened a bit in their childhood or has been happening with their bosses along the way, that starts to, the fear of that and the dance of that starts to come up in that relationship. When you take that woman and you give her sexual health, rights, boundaries, understanding herself, what is okay with, what does she want, what not, you give her that education, and now she's empowered in every area of her life, right? Men haven't had anybody guiding or big enough, it doesn't seem like, guiding their deconstruction of the bullshit they have been marinated in, and their parents, their fathers and grandfathers have been marinated in. Yeah, and they've needed someone who's like, "Honey, yeah, you can pull her hair, but if you don't ask first, how safe do you think she's gonna be with you? Do you want a woman who blooms because she feels so loved and protected by you, and that you know every place to touch and when and what it does to her? Like, do you want that? Because if you want that kind of experience, we have to take apart some of the stuff that you've been told, which was gonna set you up to not be able to have the relationship you want."
Can I add one other dimension to this? I'm agreeing
Please.
with you categorically. There's a mirroring that's going on too, and this is part of the whiplash. Men
Mm.
men do not get that education, and they
No.
abuse it.
Yep.
That this is a fact, and it's
Mhm.
ubiquitous. But
Mhm.
there's another aspect to this, which is many men who have been who've grown up in this atmosphere, hashtag Me Too, women's lib, feminism,
Mm-hmm.
there's a feeling that a man grows into an environment where he is innately guilty of abuse, of this kind of violative behavior. And this has created its own reaction formation, which
Mm-hmm.
is, to your point, when I'm one, I feel guilty about my own stuff, my own
Mm-hmm.
genitals.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I'm a teenager and when I'm entering my college years, society and this entire movement is telling me that I'm a rapist, abuser, and that I
Mm-hmm.
don't deserve to be a man. And part of the backlash to the backlash is this feeling that there's been a focus almost entirely on women, women's rights, minority rights. There's an identity, politics, and focus that young men have grown allergic to. And
Yeah.
I'm not justifying it.
No,
I'm
no, I
merely
got you.
expressing that
Mm-hmm.
part of this Gen Z male
Mm-hmm.
complex has a lot
Mm-hmm.
to do with this reaction to the reaction to reaction and growing up in an environment of double and triple shaming. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So I'm shamed
Right.
when I find my dick, and then I'm shamed when I try to express myself. And then now, as a young adult, I'm being shamed for being a heterosexual man and even a heterosexual white man.
Yeah.
That's no good. I need to apologize. I need to be disciplined and I need to behave myself. And the visceral reaction to that is Nick Fuentes. I'm not
Yes. Right.
justifying it.
No, I
I'm
got
just
you.
I'm just
Yeah.
illustrating that this is a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, and we have to keep working. Like we have to keep working with it. Like how well is power and control? Yes, you can go do all those things. Power, more do whatever it is, react in a way that puts you on top again in some ways. But how is that going to work for your interpersonal life? If you have no close relationships that has some reciprocity with it, unless it's just other guys who think like you, that's as good as it ever going to get for you.
So what's the
I hope you're
solution
I hope
though?
you're gay because that will
How
work a
can
lot
we
better.
how can we help the Zoomer male? Like, as a therapist, as someone who's an expert in this very
Yeah,
subject, again, I'm agreeing with you from the female perspective. But
right.
the real problem right now is these young men who are really, really lost. And part of the excuse and the self victimization that these men are bringing upon themselves is what I've illustrated as being shamed into adulthood simply for being male.
That's right. Yeah.
So how can we fix that? How can we
I
address
think it's
that male malaise, right?
yeah, I think it's we have to give them the information they've never had. Like somebody has to sit down and say, "Let's look at this together as a group of men. Let's look at this blah 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 blah." But they also have to be able to discern if what they're getting out there, they're being exploited there too. I'm going to make you so good and mad, so much like a victim that you're going to help fund my whatever, right? Men have to be able, if it makes you feel blamed or you're a victim or you don't matter, if it makes you feel any of that stuff, it's not going to be a direction that's going to help you.
But
You have things to learn. Huh?
they embrace it in droves. It's like a needle
I
in the
know.
vein. In the intellectual side, okay, on the X cauldron of Drek, you've got all of this frothy self
Yep.
victimization, and
That's
even
right.
on the intellectual college circuit, you have the rise of Jordan Peterson and his
Mhm.
kind, where it's about reframing the male power dynamic with women and it's turning it upside down so that the man is abused, that the man is taken advantage of, and the man needs to reassert himself. And again, I'm not justifying these positions.
Yeah.
I'm merely illustrating that the
Sure.
rise of the pundit and the rise of the ex-troll,
Yeah.
and now it's the groypers, namely, as I mentioned, Fuentes, where you have open misogyny,
Mm-hmm.
open
Violent.
racism and anti-Semitism. It's
Mm-hmm.
no longer a dog whistle.
Mm-mm.
It's a bullhorn vuvuzela of screaming hatred. And
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming more and more common that way because of this sense of frustration. So many
Mm-hmm.
men are turning to this, and it's tragic. And
It
it has its
is, but they're
origin in
seeking.
everything you're talking about.
Yeah.
But you can't tell a lot of these guys that, women have been dealing with all of this for generations, and it's up to you to chill the hell out.
Well,
I'm
it's up
not
to
sure
you to
that's
learn
going
the
to
things you
work.
didn't get taught. I don't even think it's chill the hell out, because then you're just putting on again another mask, right? I
Right.
mean,
So
it's
this,
like,
I'm just asking you for, for
yeah,
my listeners too. I've got
sure,
listeners, and I've got folks who I communicate with, millennial men and Gen Zers, and
sure,
they're telling me this directly, that they feel disadvantaged. They feel
right.
that they're the victim, and they feel that society is now pinned against them.
Well, isn't that convenient?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean by self-victimization.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but is there one man out there that says, I am not a wuss? I can handle hard. If there were things I was not given in order to be successful in my life, not just financially, but relationally, I will do what it takes to learn. And I'm going to find someone who really knows. I will not just find another man that looks like me. I'll find a man that doesn't look like me, or his orientation isn't like mine, or I'm going to find a woman. I'm going to find me somebody who's been in this mess for long enough to help me know how to heal, so I can have emotional intelligence, relational
Right.
intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and I can blend them together, because I am freaking human. And there has never been another human like me walk this planet. My job is to be authentically the best human I can be. So I'm not going to shy away because, oh, somebody says I need to learn to be more emotional. I'm not going to go, fuck that. Right. I'm going to
Well,
be
it
like,
sounds to me you're recommending networking and building support structures.
building support structures around this kind of thing. Yes, absolutely. But not more where you're just echoing back that you're a victim. Because you're the only one who can decide, I'm stronger, I'm more courageous than that. I'm not a victim. I have choices on what I say and I do every day, and I am willing to be accountable to the effect of those on others who are different from me. You can do it.
Yeah, I
I
get
raised
it. That,
boys
that
telling them they
sounds
could
that
do it.
sounds terrific in principle, but
I
what I'm
know.
trying to get at is, from you. You're the expert. Best practices that young men can adopt in 2025 to attain that attitude. Because
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard for a lot of dudes. So the
it is
first
hard.
recommendation from
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
from
So
Doc
I would
Tina,
say,
from Doc
yeah, I
Tina.
would say pull together a group, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, small group of other men who have the same goal or hope. Start out by reading the book Shameless Parenting, Everything I Need to Raise Shame-Free Confident Kids. You're going to feel like, what? Why am I getting this book? Because it's going to give you what you likely did not get every age and stage. And so what you guys are going to do together is read the first chapter, Birth to Two. Go to the library, get those books, read them to the little person inside of you. I know this sounds like you don't want to do it, but the thing is, if you're wanting to heal this, this is the direction you need to go.
Guys, we're gonna put a link in the description
Yeah.
below.
And if you do this and you reach out when you get to the end of the book and you want to talk to me about anything about this, we can set up a Zoom meeting for you and your book group. I very much want to support men doing this. And this is step one.
So step one, which is find a group of like-minded souls who aren't losers and aren't cranking Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, but are more open-minded and accepting and taking on a sense of personal responsibility, not blaming society and blaming all the chicks in your graduating class for taking all of the spots in college and all the available jobs, and stop playing video games all day and vaping, and maybe creep out of the basement and give this a whirl. I think that that's a healthy piece of advice, right?
Yeah. But it's hard because I recognize that what I'm recommending here feels vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. This is not what I tend to do with my guy friends. And I'm saying things like, okay, you're going to be getting 5 books from the library. You're going to read them out loud in your group, one person at a time. These are little kid books. And you're going to listen like that part of you that's still in there, that's only a toddler. You're going to listen from that place. After you guys have all done that, you're going to go, 2 to 4 and do the same thing all the way through. It's going to take at least 10 weeks probably. But if you do this, it will start to give you the skills and the thinking that will help you function interpersonally in a way that makes you feel really proud of yourself. Because, yeah.
That's good stuff. You have another
Yeah.
aspect to your therapy that I'd love to touch on, and even through the lens of this Gen Z male, you touch on psychedelics used for treatment. Now,
Yeah.
it's been proven clinically that the use of psychedelics, by, in a sense, giving folks that power of the third eye, you can kind of see your own life from this other perspective. There's treatment for alcoholism. I know that MDMA was in clinical trials recently, and even pharmaceutical companies are using ketamine to treat depression and anxiety. There's pharmaceutical brand names that are there that are using inhalers and nasal sprays of special
ketamine,
K,
nasal,
which is coming from a major pharmaceutical company now to treat conditions. And I personally know many people who are on these therapies and doing much better thanks to them.
Oh, yeah.
They get their once a week, twice a week ketamine therapy, and it chills them out. So I want to pass the mic back to you about the use of psychedelics for therapy, for coming to know yourself.
Yeah.
And how effective that is. And maybe even for these, who knows, for these Gen Z guys, come on, guys, you could trip your way into adulthood. That could be the byline.
But it's not
into
trip your way
growing the hell up.
Yeah. Well, help you grow up, show up, and shape up, really, in your life. You want to do shape up. It's what we're doing. It's the path we're all on. No shame. I always say humans, there's no such thing as a perfect human. Humans are radically valuable and radically imperfect. It's a both and game here.
Right.
So we all have growing edges. We've got to have some humility about the fact that we're still learning. We're still figuring things out. Yeah, that's human. No apology for that at all. So what about psychedelics and healing trauma, and especially complex trauma like we've been talking about sexually? When we shame a kid for being them, but it's like we'd be shaming them from being creative at every single step of the way. It'd be horrible. We would have doomed their careers, right?
Yeah.
To not have creativity carved out of them. When just a brief, and people can do their own research, but MDMA was in clinical trials, I think, for 15 years. It presented conclusive evidence to the FDA in the way the FDA had requested that they run their studies a decade before. They presented the evidence and politically got turned down.
Well, recently, I know a little bit about this too. Recently, the one company that did do the MDMA clinical trials kind of blew the study, to be honest. It wasn't necessarily a political problem recently, But the company even admitted that they were negligent in terms of how the study was conducted. There was conflict of interest. There was leading the witness on the part of the study researchers,
Yeah, I know
and
there's a, yeah.
it was a messy study, and it kind of blew it. However, going years back, a lot of these drugs were illegal. They stopped studying them, including LSD, which has
Yeah,
tons of
absolutely.
potential. So I agree with you
Absolutely.
in principle. I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
factually that the most recent MDMA clinical trials were flawed. And the reason that they got rejected by the company's own admission, too, is that they kind of blew the shot.
Well, you have to do a deeper dive than that. I'm just going to say, because there is a particular company that is going, or group that is going out of their way to try to discredit what happened with MAPS, and it's there's a whole lot to that. There's a whole lot to that, and I've read and listened to most of
You need
it.
to get into it. The tragedy, though, is that
Yeah.
you and I are in 100% agreement that, for
Yes.
example, MDMA has
Yes.
amazing therapeutic potential.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Incredible.
I'm all in. I'm all
Yeah.
in. And I would
And
apply the same thing to ketamine, which is already proven, to lysergic acid dimethylamide, which is already proven. And all of these goodies are potentially enormous for human
right.
therapy, self-reflection, and all that. And
For
it's been
all
our
kinds of
idiotic
healing.
government, the drug war, which is,
Yeah. So ketamine is federally approved. We were seeking MDMA approval and we should have gotten it. And I know this stuff inside and out. So yeah, I won't get into it, but it's the results of the studies are really incredible. People who have had 20 plus years of severe PTSD trauma symptoms go into this study. A year later, 68% still are not showing any sign of PTSD on a assessment test that they had taken before. It's not there. A year later, like, it can really rewire the brain. What is super fascinating and unlike any other medicine that I can think of is that whether we're talking, I live in Oregon. Oregon is one of 3 states that psilocybin is legal.
Yeah, almost everything got legalized in Oregon, right?
No.
No?
MDMA is not legal. LSD is not legal. No, but psilocybin did become legal, and they worked out all the processes. It costs you about $15,000+ a year to have a service center, and another 2 to 4 to be a licensed facilitator. So there's a lot of regulations now around it and all of that kind of thing. Did not change that it's underground as well. But here's what psychedelics will do is they will work with an indigenous idea that you have an inner healer that wants to heal where you find struggle, right? And there may be things you need to look at, face, whatever, but when you go under, it's likely to not be the same every single time, but the medicine will likely give you something you really need. It's important for people to understand these are non-addictive, any of them. Psilocybin. Ketamine is an anesthesia. It's not a psychedelic, and you can't abuse ketamine.
It's a cow tranquilizer originally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
MDMA, you could take way too much, but and hurt yourself. It increases blood pressure. You want to make sure your
there
heart's
are
already in a good
cardiovascular
place.
effects, right?
Yeah, cardiovascular effects, exactly.
Right.
So, but by and large, these drugs are working to get people who have been addicted, not been able to get things, get off their drugs or whatever. People who are some chronic pain, certainly trauma, depression, anxiety, hypervigilance, nightmares that are related to the trauma, that kind of thing begins to just heal the brain. And one of the experiences you have when you're under is it's a very somatic experience, and that's because it's affecting your brain. You'll feel it in your body, and that is what ends up really lasting for people, like shifting up their whole brain space. The brain opens up unlike it's been open since you were 5 years old. Because after that, you started patterning in your thinking, and
So what
that's
Aldous Huxley called the doors of perception, where the band The Doors got its name, right? So your doors are opening. There's all these frequencies, right? So it's kind of
yeah.
like a radio dial.
Mm-hmm.
And then you turn it, and then certain stations come in, and then you like certain stations over others. And then as you grow up, you're just listening to 2 or 3 stations, and there's a
That's right.
whole bandwidth there that you
That's
could
right.
tune into. And when you take these drugs, all of a sudden you're realizing that there's stations of amazing music almost at
Yeah.
every turn of the dial. And then
Right.
if you're really having a good time, then you get all of them at once. And
Mm-hmm.
that could be a really
That's can
eye-opening
be
experience
overwhelming.
too.
But
Yeah.
this is what is different about using these drugs for healing versus using these drugs for recreation. If I'm going to use them for healing, I'm going to actually spend an hour or two talking to a therapist about I want to understand the mechanisms of action, I want to understand dosage, I want to understand a whole lot of things about me, but then I want to be able to talk about what's my hope and intention in this particular healing thing, right? That's preparation. We do the healing, we're asked a couple very open-ended questions of things we might want to remember when we talk about this tomorrow and next week or whatever, which we're going to let the person rest. Then when we do start talking about it, we're curious about if there was anything that they would like to see develop further in their life or think about more in their life, right? This is integration.
You're bringing intentionality into the
We're bringing
experience.
integration. We're wanting to help
Yeah.
them manifest what they're wanting to see manifested in their life from any wisdom that came out of this. And sometimes it's there right away. Sometimes it's not there for a week or longer, even. So we're just inviting them to keep being curious if there's something that's wanting to, because the brain remains open, especially if you're on MDMA or something with a longer window, psilocybin, 5 hours or whatever. The brain is going to remain open for another week or two or more, depending. And we want to work with that because we want to help them or support them in shaping their brain and their forward movement in a way that they really want.
Yeah, and it's been effective. And it's a shame, to your point, that the drug war, we can
Yeah.
blame Nixon for this too, along with a
Right.
host of other
Exactly.
things too, that you take this off the shelf and you're depriving generations of patients and their families the opportunity to heal through
I
really
know.
accessing that sense of inner objectivity. That's the way I like to look at it,
Right.
where you see
Yeah.
yourself as yourself in a way you
Yes.
normally can't do when you're just
Right.
walking around enduring the trials and tribulations of a
Right.
life that's been basically grounded and rooted in, to your point, shame
Right.
and the lack of
Exactly.
personal
But this
acceptance.
can give you an experience of being globally, universally loved. And you have an experience of it while you're inside the medicine. And now that's called everything that has to do with shame into question. So
Yes.
now I can start going, but I felt this and I saw this and I realized I was connected to all things and that I've always been so loved and nothing ever changes that. So I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't. So you start to work with, well, what would you need in order to you think see yourself more accurately, like blah blah. This can combat shame relatively quickly compared to therapy.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because it gives perspective. And with perspective comes context too. When you got tunnel vision, you're like a mouse going around
Mhm.
and round and round. And then when you get your consciousness expanded like that, it literally opens up not only, to your great point, not only your mind, but your body. And
Yeah.
then the unity between the two. And then not only your mind and your body with you, but your mind and your body with minds and
Yeah.
bodies of everything.
Exactly.
So whether you're at Burning
Exactly.
Man, you're at Burning Man having a good time, or whether you're in your physician's office or within these clinical settings where these drugs are
Sure.
administered, you're having talk sessions and you're tripping, but you're tripping with intention, to your point,
Oh,
and
with intention and
integration,
yeah, and
and it's
safety and
all coming out. And I find them incredibly valuable and have epic potential for
epic potential. Yeah, there's a couple of there's probably several documentaries out there, but I think about one called Dosed, or it's Dosed 1, and the other one was Dosed 2. And one is like, substance use, and the other one's cancer. And Dose 2 is about cancer and helping somebody in that problem, the role that psychedelics can play. And the therapist in there was a therapist I used to train back when he was young. But they've been doing this in Canada longer than we have in the US, for sure. So they're much further along with that.
Science is a human endeavor, and even medicine, we have our implicit biases. And this is true
Yeah.
for everything from the hard sciences, like
Yeah, sure.
string theory. String theory has been probably bullshit for 20 years, and they can't fess up to it because you got careers and you got everyone vested in it. It's gone nowhere. And then the food we eat, and then we can go on how science and scientists make mistakes. And I think this idea of the psychedelic revolution is a reevaluation of orthodoxy in a way that's refreshing and necessary. Right? It's very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that I think that there is so much opportunity here for us as people in a time of so much fracture to start to really get clear about what is like uh divisive, what is coming in from the outside world that is divisive. I'm going to find ways to shut that off. I'll live without. I'm going to shut that off. And where are the places I can get encouragement, love, grounding, curiosity, openness, respect, accountability to my power, just where I can really, the things that are going to really nourish me to make a difference in my own life, but make a difference in my community. Just my presence will be different,
Yeah. And if enough folks can do it, it has a reverse effect. So from
Yeah,
macro to micro and micro to macro, right?
that's right.
So then it's a healing not only for the individual, but it's a healing for our society.
Absolutely, for all the way down, because it's going to eventually get where we're healing the kids. We're doing it right. There's a book I wish I could tell you about because I don't think it's been published yet. And my daughter, who's an editor, had read it, but I kept hearing about it, and I said, "Will you ask him if I can read it?" But it's just it kind of gives a sci-fi example of what it would look like if we actually already had in place all the science that there is so that things are taken care of, and the money is distributed in a way where everybody is provided for food and housing and clothing. I mean, just the basic stuff that we all need, that's provided. And now, as a whole society, we're committed to living in a way that supports each other, that sees ourselves as
It's like Star
interrelated.
Trek.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it was a fun read because I could see how the kids, like when they heard their first story of somebody having trauma, like a violent event happen, they were so curious, like, how could a parent treat someone that way? Or how could, like they just had no concept of it because they were always treated with respect. Like, you're 3. Of course you're 3. Of course you're acting like you're 3, but I'm going to treat you I'm going to model for you how to treat people. Like, yeah, you don't get to walk out in the street without holding my hand. We'll sit here until you're ready to hold my hand. I know that doesn't feel fair, but I'm part of my job is to keep you safe. And you know what I mean? It's just, you know, kids are allowed to be kids when the public understands what's developmentally appropriate at each age.
Yeah. So it's nirvana for real, and it's not that hard if you
It's
really just
not.
apply. So
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that all problems go away or that your kids aren't going to make mistakes. I used to say, but you can turn that into a lesson by just thinking about how you want to do it different next time.
and giving them a little more freedom too. So if you give them that
Yes.
sense of intimacy
Yes.
and trust,
That's
then
right.
you could let them go do stuff. You don't need to helicopter parent them and text them 86 times a day and
Right.
and then keep them inside all the time
Oh
and
my
be
God,
constantly
no.
paranoid and just let them be kids, let them grow up, right? And I think this could very
Right.
much help.
Yeah. I often will say there's a big difference between love and caregiving or caretaking, I mean, caretaking. So, loving, caretaking. Caretaking is doing for someone, two, three, four, five, doing for someone something that they themselves can do, even if it's hard. Okay. If I am doing for you what I know you can do, I'm calling, I'm checking on you, I'm talking to your teachers, I don't like that grade they got, I'm doing all of this. All I am communicating to my child over and over again is how to do things easy and that my parents don't have confidence in me because they keep doing what I can do. And I've just abdicated my life to them. I've learned how to abdicate, right? But when
Yeah,
you've got that 2-year-old that wants to climb the ladder, you like, okay, you go climb that ladder. And I'm going to be close enough that if you slip, I can catch you. But I want you to feel the height you're getting at. And I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about being this high? How do you feel about this high as they do it? Right? I'm saying, I believe in you and I got you if you fall. Right? I won't let you
right.
fall all the way to the ground. One of the things I am most grateful for in my life was that I had a father like that. And I learned through the way he treated me what my limits were. And by the
Yeah,
time I was, a few years younger than your son, I was coming at him with stuff, because I knew, right? You always think, I would come and he would say, you got to lay down the data. You got to lay down the data. Go ahead and stand on something, but you got to have something behind it if you're going to argue with me. He kept inviting me into a higher self, you know? And I love that. But he also was willing to take my pushbacks about where he needed to grow emotionally because I went into this field, right? And I'm like, no, Dad, you don't get to do that. You don't get to just be pissed off and close the door on this person because it affects me. It affects children. No, can't do it. I'm not emotionally strong like you, but you're going to need to learn how to be. And
I
you can.
love that. And in ways, we've come full circle back to that Gen X male
Mm-hmm.
incel in the basement,
Mm-hmm.
which is if
Right.
you're born entitled
That's right.
and you're born blaming others and your
Mm-hmm.
parents are in a sense essentially spoon feeding reality to you,
Right.
then it's easy to fall into this trap of hopelessness, self-victimization, and blaming your female counterparts for everything while they go off and get educated and network and get good jobs and have a happy life.
Right.
So
Because you're
I'm not
not.
necessarily blaming the parents, but I think that providing this context is important, which is like, how do
Yeah.
we raise our kids well? And how do we find a good balance between what you're saying, which is caretaking and caregiving, which is
Mm-hmm.
empowering our children
Right.
with the privilege and joy of failing, which is, you know what, go out there, get your ass kicked. But you know what? Get up and go out there again.
Right. But see, what's underneath that is I feel worthless because my parents were always doing for me what I could do for myself. And they were always correcting me. That I was always supposed to
Yeah.
be 30 when I was 3. I was
Yeah.
always getting shamed and corrected, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like shit on the inside, but I have learned how to blame. So I never deal with the fact that I feel like shit, which is why I am making everyone else responsible. And I have people in front of me that are demonstrating this, but they get to because they have so much money. I guess you get a free ride when you have so much money.
Yeah, they have free much money, or they're really popular on social media spouting this crap. And
Crap, right.
it's negative reinforcement fueled by
Mhm.
this paradox that you've illustrated, which is really profound, which is, on the one hand, you have to be a winner. You got to win. And on the other, I'm going to do everything for you. I'm going to wipe your ass before you even roll out of bed. And that
Right.
creates this disaster of a generation, which is
It
like,
does.
go get them, Junior. And oh, by
Right.
the way, here's another shirt that you should wear or another coat, and are you feeling okay?
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
you left your coat at home this morning? I'll bring it. You left your lunch at
Yes.
home? Oh, I'll
I'm
bring
going to
it.
text you at school on your phone 36 times to make sure
Right.
you're okay, distracting you, distracting the other students, and embroiling myself in your bullshit.
Right. And I'll tell you a piece of research you're going to love. There's a guy at the University of Washington, Jim Medina, who did a study on what were the factors that allowed children to learn in schools and what did not. Do you know this research?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
So he found that children, to the degree they are worrying about what's happening at home, is the degree to which they are distracted at school. And there's like a white noise machine gets turned on
Yeah.
high, right? When a child felt really confident that everybody in their house was fine, people were getting along, the parents weren't divorcing, they liked each other, they even were kissing in the kitchen, all this, they don't have a white noise machine that goes on or goes on
Right.
very little, right? And that was the factor. Do you know how many kids, when my last probably decade of teaching grad students, I would ask, how many of you saw your parents' marriage? What do you mean? Well, like, did you see them kiss or hug? Or did you see them with their door closed saying, don't come in unless you knock, or we're going out, we're leaving you guys at home, or we're going on a trip. Did you see their marriage? I had so many 25 to 35-year-olds that were saying to me, I never saw that. They came to all my games, they came to parent-teacher conferences, but
Right.
I never saw their marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in a diverse neighborhood in Chicago's North Side, and it was a lower middle class, semi-sketchy neighborhood, urban, suburban kind of cusp. There was a German family who lived just up the street. We were Hungarian emigres, and they were German. And I remember one of the most astonishing things that I can recall in my childhood is that the husband and wife duo of the German family who lived up the street, they had 3 kids. They were taking a walk in the neighborhood and they were holding hands. I couldn't believe that. Parents do that? They actually show affection to each other?
Yeah. Yeah. And
It was mind-boggling to me as a child. And that shows you how tragic this is, and it reinforces everything you're saying about growing up in endemic cultures and societies where we're taught to feel like shit.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Doesn't
and the
it
fact
suck?
that you remember that so clearly says how much that impacted you, right? That's how big it is. So we have to say seeing love is foundationally important to the security that child will feel and take into their adulthood or not. And yet, how much and where are we supporting marriages, supporting childcare, supporting healthcare, supporting the thing that is going to make that security stand, right? I have to stand it on something, right? And we are jeopardizing it in so many places as fast as we can. And it's making people freaked out and pretty scared, understandably.
In addition to podcasting, I post on TikTok. And I do this for a number of reasons. One, I love doing these first person point of views, like a minute and a half. I bang those out. But I get a blistering tsunami of hate on a daily basis. And the reason that I like this is that this is a visceral reminder to me of the mess that we're in. It doesn't matter what my position is. I could be too much to the left or too much to the right. I could be up and I can be down. It's like, my eyebrows are too thick or they're too thin. Whatever. It's it's a torrent of daily hate. And it's not like I'm a masochist, but I think we all need visibility into how messed up our culture is and the effort that we should make individually to build trust, build intimacy, and
Right.
just find a happy life. And I think
Yeah.
what you've described is a great prescriptive roadmap for at least starting with yourself. Just
Mhm.
start here and then see what
Right.
happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's um there's so much that I believe that we deserve to stand up against for ourselves, or we deserve for ourselves, which might require us to do some standing up, to something. And who wins?
I'm going to express my opinion. And when I was younger, this stuff would be devastating because I was frail. And you know what? I've picked up
Yes.
this invincibility, which is like, I don't care, go for it. I feel good
Right.
about myself. I
That's right.
found, I found my dick, and it's
Yeah.
okay. It's
It's
okay.
okay. I'm okay. That's right. Absolutely. But see,
Right.
that's the strength I'm talking about. That's the courage I'm talking about. Like you've got to grow that in you, and who wins? When we buy hook, line, and sinker that we should hate each other, doubt each other, question each other, not trust each other, who wins? Really, honestly, who wins? Because I don't win. I don't feel more like I belong. I don't feel secure in a community or blah blah blah. I just feel alone with all this hate, right? So
Yes.
who wins? Well, if I have a society of people who feel that way, we are much more apt to be influenced without question,
Right.
where we just allow it and we go with it. They want who wins? People with lots of money and power win if we start hating each other.
Yeah.
I refuse. I refuse to give them that power. They don't deserve it. They haven't earned it. I don't respect people like
That
that.
goes all the way to our beginning, which is it's
Yeah.
all about control, folks. Do you
Mhm.
buy into your abuser's game plan to
That's
use
right.
you?
That's
And
right.
if you don't, if you refuse to do that, then you finally find yourself and you've got a way out of this and you've got a journey to your own self actualization.
And to your own strength and courage, to your own place of, you know what? I'm good. I am clear about why I do what I do. I understand my quirks and I'm working on things, like I'm good. You can have whatever opinion you have. And that's actually going to say more about you than it's ever going to say about me.
Right.
Because the people who know me would just know that was BS. And they're the ones whose opinion I care about anyway. Right? Like we've got to grow a pair or a something. We got to grow something here.
Absolutely. And on that growing a pair, motivation, uh, tell us a little bit about your books. We're going to put links in the
Yeah,
description, but just as a closer, can you tell us a little bit specifically about your
sure.
practice, about your books, where to
Yeah.
find you, how to
Mhm.
continue the conversation even on a one-on-one basis? I
Mhm.
think our listeners would be really intrigued to know and follow up with you.
Mhm. Um, so Sex, God, and the Conservative Church: Erasing Shame from Sexual Intimacy is just a wonderful look at how did America become sex negative? What role has consumerism played in this? What role did the church or, the church, the empire of the church, the institution of the church, what role does it have? Were we meant to be sex negative, or was there sex positive stuff that totally didn't ever make it in that should have? Like, and so there's some beautiful Hebrew stories in there that were on the Abrahamic line that could have been brought forward, weren't. Um, and then it talks about healing and how do you heal? And then what are practices I can bring, pleasure practices I can bring, connection practices I can bring into my life that might allow me to find my own integration of personhood, spirituality, sexuality, whatever. So that's what that book is about. As that book was coming out, I started to hear from, I worked in family medicine and in marriage and family therapy and medical family therapy. I started to hear from doctors all over, like, I'm feeling pressure to know more or to answer questions from my patients around sexuality. I didn't get that training either, by the way, as no did any therapist or whatever, unless they go back to school to study it, right? It's the same with physical therapy. There's no pelvic floor, men or women, in physical therapy. When you go to physical therapy school, you have to go study it. So this stuff all runs really, really deep. But they were telling me, can you give me anything? And I'm like, I got you. I will give you handouts. So if you're doing a well child visit or what, you're sitting with an adolescent, you'll have a handout about that age range and what they're trying to accomplish behaviorally, emotionally, what their curiosities are, and then what are they needing from the caregivers in their life and all that. And I said, and I'll put resources and everything. So front back page, every age, right? I did that. I was passing that around, and people were saying to me who had read my first book, I don't want to do to my kids what was done to me. Can you write me something? I will. And then doctors helped me. And so I said, okay, I will put this all in a book. And that became Shameless Parenting, everything you need to raise shame-free, confident kids and heal your shame too. Both can be purchased on Amazon. If you are somebody who is not supporting Amazon any further, which I support people in doing whatever feels right in this time, especially if it's respectful of other people as well, go ahead and take the title and the author to your local bookseller and ask them to order it for you, and they'll do that for you. If anybody out there wants to do this work, even though it feels scary, and they can't afford the books, you can DM me on Instagram at Dr. Tina Shameless.
We'll put that in the link too.
Yeah. You can DM me and tell me, what your situation is and that you need a book. And I will send you a promo code for that audio version of that book.
That's cool.
I'm happy to do that. I love it when people can afford my books because that helps me, but I don't want anybody to not do this work when they really want to because they can't afford it. I'm totally got you. So, and yeah, that's probably the best way. I have a website. That's my name, tinaschermersellers.com. There's a lot of free stuff there. Feel free to grab anything. Yeah, those are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me. If you want to know more about my psychedelic organization, you can go to inanarising.org.
That's a cool name. That's a kind of organization that I would like to.
It's a tremendous. It draws really incredible people to it. And then we have Blackberry Retreat Center, which is blackberryretreat.com. Yeah, and if you are a clinician or educator or clergy or therapist who did not get training in sexuality, sexual health, or understanding the impact of your sexual biases on your clinical work, go to NWIOI.com. That's Northwest Institute on Intimacy. They have the most efficient, high quality, easy to access training that you can get to really help you be able to reckon. You've got people that are biopsychosocial, spiritual, sexual. That's human. They're walking in thinking you got trained in that too, and you did not. None of us did. So that organization exists to support people who are already clinicians out in the world who want more to offer their parents or their patients.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And just lastly, how did you get into doing what you're doing? That's usually the first question in a podcast, but we've had such a wonderful conversation. I thought we'd round it out with what inspired you to be a healer and a helper and a researcher too.
Yeah. Well, I often say I just have always been a passionate person who knew what I wanted, something I wanted. So when I was 5, I said, I want to ice skate. And I was an Olympic hopeful by the time I left it. Just that's kind of me. But
you're type A.
I talk about this on the website. I grew up in a Swedish immigrant home. So parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, they all came from an epigenetics of body positivity and sex positivity. I saw people sitting on each other's lap, hugging and kissing each other. My grandmother running around in a shorty nightgown, when she's 85, that was my home because that had been their heritage and they brought that to the US. Which is
the exact opposite of most people's, including and especially mine. So,
yeah. And many,
Hungarian emigres.
Right. Yeah. But you are not alone. Many people
mine is way more common. You're the outlier.
I'm the outlier. I was in my 30s before I realized, I'm the one that came from the weird family. It just hadn't dawned on me. So that is what, by that point, I was already teaching in a graduate program. I got hired. One of the classes I got hired to teach was the sexuality course for grad students who were becoming therapists. The program that I was in felt very strongly that you are only ever as good a therapist as you know what your own stories are, like where you begin and end. So you're clear about where your client begins and ends. And so it was part of their training that every class, like gender or like medicine and medical family therapy and drugs having to do with the psychology side of things, psychopharmacology. Anyway, we would have them write a piece of their story. What's the medical story in your family? What's the gender story in your family? So when they got to my class, you're going to write your sexual autobiography. I'm going to give you about 70 questions, because not to answer all of them, but to see the arc that those questions represent. Then I'm going to ask you to commit it to paper. I'm going to spend anywhere from an hour to 2.5 hours on each paper, because what I will write in the margin is, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. It was never meant to be that way. Here's what, and I'm going to give you what you should have gotten as you tell me the things that hurt along the way, right? I want you to see your story as an arc of a story, a narrative, and not just this experience. I remember getting in trouble at 5 and this experience. I remember having my first kiss, because group of experiences is not a story. I want you to write your narrative, right? I started to see a tremendous shift in how much kids knew about what was normal. So when they developed and blah, 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 to absolute feeling of disgust about themselves for the horrible things they thought, wanted, or did. And that began, I started to see it around 2000. I was hitting my first wave of students that would have hit their adolescence in the 90s, early 90s. And by then we were pumping billions of dollars into removing research and adding abstinence education. And it was the merging of church and state. This is when we put federal money into religious education in our public schools. Reagan started the family life, something which was just a whole thing about condemning people and separating, and it was very racist. And anyway, it all started there, and it's just been going, because actually all of that was a front for the only thing we're going to care about is making money for our stockholders in our corporations. That's it. That's what we care about.
It always comes back to the money, doesn't it?
It does.
It really, really does.
It does. And yeah.
Yeah, and the folks.
And I want to say it's a core human trait to want more. Go to the grocery store with a 3-year-old. Mommy, I want this, I want this, I want this. That's a core human thing. We were never taught, as part of your just general education, why self-discipline is such an important thing. When we hold ourselves back, why? Is it so that it's better for this person too? We wait a little longer? Like, it is not all about us. If we want a rich life, we're going to know how to do gratitude and generosity. We're going to recognize that the earth is constantly giving to us. We give back to the earth, right? She's sustaining it. There's reciprocity. We stopped that with colonization. It was all about extraction from that point forward. Extraction was never a sustainable model, economic or otherwise.
Yeah, I think human beings have always been conquering, but your point about gratitude, your point about gratitude, though, is central to our entire conversation, which is that's the one emotion and characteristic and essential trait totally lacking, which is I feel blessed and I want to share that blessing. It's me, me, which is further reinforced by all the shaming. So round and round and round it goes.
Well, and I need to talk about me all the time and what I'm doing and what I've done and all that, because this is so empty, because this inside of me is so empty. When inside of me, I'm like, I'm a beloved, miraculous creation who's still very much on a learning journey.
Yeah.
Then I don't need to talk about myself so much. I'm good.
Or be creative. See, this great. We lose. It's one of the most wonderful aspects of childhood, and it's the most tragic one, which is jettisoned, is this sense of play. And the
Yes.
essence of play is
Yes,
creativity, like
it
just play.
is. Yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah. One of the Jewish stories I tell in my book is there's a belief in Judaism that when a child takes their first breath at life, when they're born, that is the breath of God, Yahweh entering their body, and it courses through their body. That's the inspiration, the in spirit,
uh-huh.
until our last breath, which is expiration, our out goes breath. And that life force is the life force of desire. Desire is at the root of all innovation, all creativity.
Yes,
I want, I see, I imagine, I desire. And desire was seen from a Jewish perspective as human, but that we needed to manage the desire in a way that also didn't hurt other people. Right.
yeah.
So I might want to go hiking, but I might decide, no, I'm not going to go hiking because I need to get my kids up and get them off to school. It's just a discipline because there are higher callings. There's higher things in my life. If we're not taught any of that, then we wonder why people are and have been just out there self-destructing.
You talked about alternative trajectories, even for our Judeo Christian heritage and
Yes.
where we went
Yes.
off the rails. The Kabbalistic mythology is cool too because it links mind and
Yes.
body, the
Yes.
chakras, and
Yes.
associating these energy points in the body with universal
That's right.
truths and energies. So there's all this good stuff
Oh,
that
there's some beautiful stuff. I think I have 8 different stories that are Jewish and some are mystic Jewish, but they're yeah. Yeah.
the Kabbalah.
I just remember when I discovered them, when I was even writing the book, I'd be like, "What?" Like, I was reading these tomes of Jewish texts that was way over my head, and then I'd stumble upon them, I'm like, "Wait, did I get that right?" And then I'd be finding other books like, "Holy cow, how come that was never talked about in at least in the Christian side of things?"
Yeah, and it wasn't talked about on the Jewish side of things either. I'm of the faith, at least ethnically, and
Uh-huh.
my father forced me into years of Hebrew school. There was never a single mention of any of the mystic tradition. Never,
Really?
not a single mention.
Oh,
And that's where all the gold is, really,
there's so much
with the
there.
archangels and the hierarchy and the
Yeah.
connection to the body and all these wonderful stories, as you
Yeah.
illustrate. So
Oh,
it's that
yeah.
hidden tradition. And going back to the psychedelics, it's opening up the doors of your knowledge, which is a
Yes.
lot of the traditions and religions are just so rich, and we've been taught to ignore most of it,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
sad. Yeah,
And only kind of go to the things that serve power and control. And we
yeah.
just wipe out, everything else. There is a first century Jewish rabbi who is well known for talking about when you moved the paraclete away so that the people, which was happened once a year, the people could see inside the Holy of Holies, you know, they saw that on top, this was in the last temple, the one that was destroyed in 72 AD, the depiction of the cherubim was different each construction of the temple. And in this one, they were in seated sexual embrace.
Oh, that's
And the
cool.
first century rabbi is known for saying, "See this? This is so you can know that God loves you and longs for you like a lover."
Right. A little
How
Jewish Kundalini
Yeah,
magic there, right?
but how much different would your life have been if
Right.
even in the ether was this idea, right? That sex is part of the breath of life.
Yeah, we should embrace it as a joy and as an expression of God rather than a repression of the
Yes,
man,
that's
right?
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, and that we're willing to understand that there's power. There is power we don't entirely understand potentially in this. And so how do we manage it in a way that honors anybody involved, that like is good for all of us, or you and I, or me, whatever the deal is, right? And we take time to make sure that there's spaciousness for that kind of experience to come through because there's
yeah.
safety and
And it
fun.
could be pure joy if we could just get over ourselves.
I know. Well, I think it is pure joy when we get over ourselves so often.
And I think that's a great way to top it. I want to thank you sincerely
Thank you.
Dr. Tina Schermer Sellers. And
Yes.
like, comment, share, folks. Welcome to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. And I'd love to bring you back at some point to talk more about these ideas and how your practice is going and your next book.
Yeah.
So let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
your time. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much.